Hey there, empowered peeps. I'm Ryan to the rescue. And nothing says cozy fall like sitting down by a hot fire, or in my case, a linear LED fireplace. So as the weather gets cooler, we tend to spend a little more time inside, and we like to be cozy, right? So I'm going to show you a really easy beginner crochet project. By the end of this video, you'll be able to make these fingerless gloves just like mine.
You know what's always sexy? Fingerless gloves.
So follow along. We're gonna have a great time learning this wonderful indoor activity. And then when we do go outside, we'll be able to keep our hands warm in style. All right, let's take a look at the package. And I wanna make sure that you're able to make sense of all of the information on here. This whole entire thing is called a skein of yarn. And here we have the brand, and this shows how many yards are on this skein and the weight of the skein. It's made of 100% acrylic, which means it is machine washable and dryable. Here we have the color, and this shows the thickness of the yarn. This is called bulky, and it's number 5. Now here you can read what tools you'll need for if you are going to crochet. Then you'll need 1 crochet hook, and it'll be 8 millimeters in size. And if you're going to knit, you need 2 knitting needles, and they are also going to be 8 millimeters in size. Crochet hooks come in a variety of sizes, and they're made out of a variety of things too. So this one's made out of plastic. A lot of times they're made out of aluminum like these, and sometimes they're even made out of wood. So the thicker the yarn that you're working with, the bigger hook that you're going to need. So the size of a crochet hook is going to be labeled on the package either by a letter or by the number in millimeters, or both. So for this project, I needed an N, and so I used this one, which is labeled N, and it just happens to correlate with the measurement of 10 millimeters. So I could use either one, an N or a 10 millimeter crochet hook. All right, before you start your project, you have to find the end of the yarn. Well, here is one end, but we don't want to work with that one because it'll have to coil back and forth as you're working, and your ball will constantly be tumbling and turning around. What we want to do is work from the yarn on the inside. So we need to find the end that's down inside of the middle. So you have to reach down inside and grab the clump in the middle, and you'll find the other end. You pull out this whole entire hunk, and now, since we have just this one piece of yarn, we know that the other end is in here. There's the end that we were looking for. And it doesn't matter that we have this big pile of yarn now, because as we get started on our project, we'll use this yarn up very quickly, and then we'll get to the point where it's just pulling straight out of the center of the skein, and that's what we want. Then as you're working on your project, it just comes straight out here, and it won't be tumbling and turning around on you. It'll just come straight out of the middle. All right, anytime you start a crochet project, you always begin with a chain stitch, and the chain stitch begins with a slip knot. So this is how you make a slip knot. Like you're going to make a knot, and you tuck the loop in, but don't let the end go through. All right, so there's a slip knot. Then you put your crochet hook through the slip knot. And you don't want to pull it too tight, like don't yank down on your crochet hook. You want to leave some room there. All right, now to begin the chain stitch, you want to hold your yarn in your hand like this. So duplicate your hand exactly like mine, and if you're left-handed, do a mirror version of this. Now, these fingers are going to hold on to your work down here. These fingers are going to help control the tension of this yarn. This is called yarn over. I'm putting the yarn over the crochet hook. Yarn over, and then pull it through. Just about that much. Not too far, not too tight. All right, now we're going to do that again. Yarn over and pull it through. Yarn over and pull it through. Now, as you go, you're gonna wanna make sure you leave enough room for your crochet hook to go back through these chains right here. All right, if you get your chain done so tight, you're not gonna be able to jab your crochet hook through there. And if you get it too loose, it's gonna look like holes. So if it's really tight, I'm not even gonna be able to pull this back through. And if I get it too loose, then I might have like a big loop like that and a big loop. All right, you see how I started out kind of even, then it looks like it gets a little bit tighter through here, and then I have these great big loops here. All right, if yours looks like that, don't worry, let's just practice again, okay? Just pull the whole thing out. And I recommend you practice your chain stitch at least 3 times. That way you'll get better at your spacing and your tension. So remember to hold the yarn right, put your finger underneath like this, and then you're gonna hold on right here. Yarn over, pull through. And then be intentional about the spacing that you do right here. And let's try to get that the same throughout our whole chain. So the fingerless gloves that I am making are this long. If you want yours to be about this long and you're using about the same thickness of yarn that I am, then you might want to use the same amount of chain stitches that I did. This is 21 stitches long, and 2 of the stitches just are the chain part. So you have to do 21 plus 2. So I'm gonna make my chain 23 stitches long. So if you want your gloves a little longer or shorter, then you can adjust your number of chain stitches accordingly. Also, if you are crocheting with a much finer yarn than I am, then it'll take more stitches because it'll be a lot closer together than this bulky yarn. Now, I can count how many chain stitches I have already by counting. This forms like a little V. Do you see the V? So I'm gonna count each one of those V's and see where I stand, and then I'll know how many more chains I need to make to get to 23. Okay, so I have 14 already, so I'm gonna keep on counting until I get up to 23. All right, once you get all of the stitches in your chain that you want, just lay it out and take a good look at it and see if it looks even to you. And if you're pleased with that, then let's carry on to the next step. If it just doesn't quite look right and it's too tight and too loose in some places, just pull it out and try again. All right, once your chain stitch is done, your project should look like this. We're going to use those V's every single time we do a crochet stitch. So this one is part of this chain that we just did. So we're not going to pay any attention to this one. We're going to skip this one and we're going to go in this one. So right now, I'm just showing you with this needle. This needle doesn't have anything to do with anything. It's just to show you where it's going to go. This crochet hook is going to go in this chain stitch right here. So remember, don't pay attention to this V because this is part of what you just did. You're going to skip one and go into this one. Now you hold this the same way you held it when you were doing the chain stitch. Put it up over your finger like this. Now we skip this one and we're going to go in this one. All right, now yarn over and pull back like this. Yarn over again and pull it back through 2 of the loops. All right, let's do that again. Now we're going to go in every single V from now on. Right through here, yarn over, pull it through 1 time, yarn over again, and pull it through 2 times. Keep your stitches loose. If they get tight, then it's going to be really hard to put your crochet hook in there. Here's the next V. Yarn over, and yarn over again. It's okay if it's a little curly at first, it'll straighten out. Just keep your stitches loose and even. All right, now let's talk about turning the corner. I have 2 more V's right here, 1, 2. So I'm gonna do 2 more stitches like usual. Yarn over once, and then yarn over and pull it through 2 loops. And one more time, go through here, yarn over, pull it through once, and then pull it through both. All right, so we are officially to the end of our first row. This was our chain stitch, and this is our first row of crochet. Now what we do is 1 chain stitch every time we turn the corner. So I'm going to do a chain stitch now, just like that, and then leave it alone. Now we flip this over, voila, and we go again. All right, now let's take a close look at what we have after we turn to the corner, and we have our 1 chain stitch right here. If we pull it back a little bit, we can see all of these V's again. Here's a V, here's a V, here's a V, here's a V, okay? Now, we don't want to try to stitch into here. This is part of our chain stitch. That's going to mess us up. Here's our first V. So what I'm doing today is showing you a single crochet stitch. And when you do a single crochet, you can put your crochet hook through both parts of the V like this, or you can just put it through the front, that's called front loop only, or you can put it through the back, and that's called back loop only. And if you go through both parts of the V, then your finished product will have a very flat, smooth look. If you go through just the front or the back loop, then your finished product will have kind of like ridges down it. Let me show you on my finished project. You see these ridges? So as we do single crochet front loop only, these beautiful ridges will come through as we continue our work. Okay, so don't let this mess you up. This is your chain stitch right here, and your chain stitch is going to kind of like form a wall up your project. So don't try to stick your needle anywhere in there because that's part of the chain stitch. Here's your first V right here, and we're going to do front loop only. So I'm just going to put it through here, not through both. Yarn over, pull it through once, yarn over, pull it through twice. So that was that V. Let's carry on to the next one. Every time you turn a corner, your project will look a little bit wonky on the end until you get down a few stitches, and then you can kind of pull it out and see if it looks straight. Try to maintain a loose hold on your yarn and also even loop size. Again, if it looks like it's getting a little too tight in here or too loose, just pull it out a few notches. It's not a problem. And then see a loop will pop up, then just get started again. Also be careful not to go back into the same V again. Otherwise, your project will start getting wider and wider as you go. So this V, I already went through here, but at the end, things look a little bit weird, so it might be tempting to go right back into that V again, but then my project will be uneven. So I can see that I already put my hook through here and I already crocheted there. So now I need to go to the next one. So I laid my project out nice and flat to see how I'm doing, and I can see I'm going in a little bit here. So this wall looks nice and straight. This one is going diagonally in, which means I am missing my last stitch at the end. And so I thought I was done, and so I just went ahead and did my chain stitch, and then I'm getting shorter each time. But I'm not done yet, So I need to find one more V right here. It kind of feels like it's slanted down a little bit, but I need to grab that V and do one more crochet. That way my project isn't getting shorter on one side. Now I'm finished with that row. And now I do my chain stitch and flip over and go again. If it's curling up too much, then that means you're getting your stitches too tight. If you can kind of straighten it out and block it out and it looks straight, then you're on track. Also, when you need to take a break and stop your project, I would recommend not stopping at the end. Stop somewhere in the middle, because the ends can be a little tricky and you don't want to get lost. So if you feel like you need to stop your project and maybe resume later or tomorrow, then go ahead and do a few stitches on into the middle. As you can see, when you're crocheting, your finished work always comes down. You work on the top of the project and your finished work comes down toward you. And you always crochet to the left. All right, so once you get in a little ways, then you'll need to go ahead and take your crochet hook out, because they're very slippery and it's going to fall out anyway, unless you leave it sitting exactly on a table. But if you're going to put it in a bag or something like that, your crochet hook is going to come out. So you can always mark your spot with just a safety pin. Just put a safety pin on there and then you're ready to go again. Once you take it out, then you know to put your crochet hook right in there where the safety pin was and continue on where you were. Now I got this adorable little marker from a friend. Thanks, Kelly. She gave me this little cherry marker. So I'm gonna mark my project with this and then I'll return later. All right, so I've decided that this is wide enough for my arm. I measured it like this and I want it to be a little bit snug, so I don't want it to gape around my arm. So I feel like that is tight enough. So I'm excited about it. I feel like it turned out really good. I love the variegated color and I love the ridges that are in it. So pretty. All right, now how we turn this into a fingerless glove is we're going to tie off the end. The way I ended was the, let me back up just a notch. So I'm going through my last loop, pull that through just like we have been, okay? And then I'm going to do my chain stitch, all right? Now let's just leave that set for a minute. Now I am going to, in a minute, I'm going to thread a needle and then I'm going to use this yarn. I'm not even going to cut it off. I'm going to use this yarn to stitch these two pieces together like that to make it into a tube. So therefore, I'm going to measure how much yarn I need to stitch that. And I'm going to just, to be safe, I'm going to make it 3 times as long as I really need. So 3 times. Now I'm going to snip this off. Now let's go back to this chain stitch and I'm going to go ahead and pull this all the way through, which makes this into a knot. And I have this needle that I got for just this purpose, and you can buy it either at a fabric store or in a kit with some other crocheting and knitting things. So thread this very wide-eyed needle. All right, let's see what the size of my finished product ended up being. It is about 10 inches in length, and that is determined by how many chain stitches we begin with at the start of our project. Then it is about 8 inches in width, and that is determined by how many rows we go back and forth and do. So I chose to do 8 inches because that felt about right around my forearm, and that might be about right for you, or you might choose to do more or less based on your forearm, but that might be a good standard measurement to go by. All right, now I'm going to decide where I want my thumb hole to begin and end, and I'm gonna mark that with some safety pins. So let's put this back around my hand, and I need to decide where I want my fingers to be. So I want the tip of my pinky finger to be out, and I want it to cover all of my palm. So I'm going to mark it like this and wrap it around like this. And so I want my thumb hole to begin right here. Okay, so if you choose to do your measurements exactly like mine, you'll have, here will be the tips of your fingers. So this will be stitched for 2 inches, and then you'll leave 3 inches open for the thumb hole. So here I have my needle threaded, and you don't have to sew it together in any real specific way. The main goal is to make sure that it is snugly sewn together and that you hide your stitches as well as possible. So here's my 2 separate pieces. I'm just gonna grab a piece of this and stitch it over here. Now, I don't want my stitches to get floppy or loose at the beginning or the end of my thumb hole, so I'm actually gonna go ahead and make a knot right here. So let's do the needle through one more time here, and then go through this loop right here, which will form a knot. All right, so that's knotted together, nice and secure. Now, when it comes to stitching past the thumb hole, we're not going to stitch the 2 pieces together. Obviously, we need a hole for our thumb. So what we're going to do is weave the needle up and down and just get past the hole. And the goal is to conceal this yarn. And then also, you can see here that I still have those V's right here. All right, so let's not stitch through the V's because we're actually going to revisit that in a little bit. So let's just go over here a little bit and weave up and down. Doesn't have to be anything specific, just up and down until you get past the thumb hole, which is going to be marked by this safety pin. So I'll just go that far. Pull it through. Now I want it to pick back up, sewing together right here. So let's put this in here and grab a stitch from this side. And we're going to go ahead and make a knot since it's the bottom of the thumb hole now. And we make the knot by doing 1 stitch and then putting it back through this loop. And that'll make a knot in our yarn. All right, now as we're stitching this together, let's just make sure that these 2 ends even up. We don't want to get distracted or busy thinking about something else and then our 2 ends don't meet up right like that. So we want our ends to meet up. So we're gonna always keep an eye on that to make sure they end up level. I don't want my stitches to be too far apart because when I put my gloves on, I don't want there to be gaps like this. So I'm gonna keep them pretty close together. If you stitch it together and you do find out that you have some gaps once you try on your gloves, then you can always just rethread your needle and do a couple more stitches. There we go, I like that. Since my beginning yarn and my ending yarn ended up at the same place, I'm gonna go ahead and tie them in a knot. Now, honestly, depending on where you stopped, it could be that your beginning yarn is over here and your ending yarn is over here. So you wouldn't be able to tie them together, and that's perfectly fine. you don't need to. I will show you how to hide them. But since mine did end up in the same place, I'm going to tie them together. So I'm going to take the needle off, tie this in 2 knots. 1, 2. Now let me go ahead and try this on and make sure I like it before I cut everything off. Oh yeah. Oh, I like that very much. Okay. You could argue that the thumb hole is too big, and there could have been one more stitch right here. That would have been fine, but I'm okay with that. I feel good about that. Now, I'm gonna cut off this tail about like so. And then this is how you hide these. Don't cut them off short like this, because if you do, then you're gonna have these little scraggly ends sticking off always as you're wearing your gloves, and that's gonna be annoying. The way you hide these is you weave your hook, start far away from here, and you weave it in and out in kind of a random pattern. And then I would say stop with your hook down. So let's stop, and it's gonna be down. That way the first thing that this is gonna do is go down and under, not up and over. So now I'm gonna pull this until it goes all the way up here. And just rotate your needle around until you can get that end of the yarn all the way up. Now, I don't want it to end up, it's sticking up right here, so I'm just gonna shove it down in the center of my glove, and it can just live in there forever. There we go, it's hidden. I feel it right here. So that's where it should be, on the inside, never to be seen again. All right, now I'm gonna do the same thing with the other one. Now, because my yarn is different, so here I have blue and here I have gray, and this piece is gray, I'm not gonna weave my gray piece up through the blue. It might be visible there. I know I'm just being nitpicky because it's not really a big deal, but I'm gonna weave my gray yarn up here in the gray part. So let's weave back again and grab that second end piece. Voila! You can totally stop right there if you want, because that is a beautiful finished product. All right, next we're going to do a step that's optional, but it's really pretty and it gives your glove a really finished look. I'm going to show you how to do a stitch of a contrasting color for the top and the thumb, around the thumb hole, and around the bottom. Now, like I said, this is optional, but it is really cute. And when you're doing the stitches on here, we had to be really careful to make sure that we stayed in exactly the right hole and exactly the right length, and keep everything nice and even, so this would turn out lovely. But when you're stitching across the end, it's kind of more random. You just grab a stitch wherever you can. And let me give you a forewarning. So some of these stitches, when we did the chain stitch between each row, there's a chain stitch. Sometimes the chain stitch you can pull out a little bit, and it makes a little bit of a hole, which is no big deal, but it just is what it is. So there's kind of a little hole each time you get to a chain stitch. So I'm going to give you a heads up that if you see one of the chain stitches is extra floppy, like this one is kind of floppy, this one is really tight, like right here is really tight. When I do a stitch here with my contrasting yarn, if it's really tight and snug, then it's going to look great, and it won't look like there are any holes. But if we get to here and I just do a stitch right here, it's going to look like there's a big hole here. So when I come to this part, I'll probably go ahead and grab another piece down here to help lock it in and make it not look like there's a hole down here. So the way we get started is you just put your hook through anywhere along the edge and then grab this yarn and pull it through. Now the end we don't want, so just set that aside. Now we're going to go in another hole nearby and grab it, pull through one time, yarn over, and pull through 2 times. And then we just continue crocheting just like we did Make note that I'm working here at the top and my project is down below. Whenever you're crocheting, the finished work is always down below. And in that way, with this below, you get this really lovely edge because most of the yarn is on the outside. On the inside, there isn't a whole lot of gray yarn. The gray yarn is on the outside, and that's the way we want it because that's our border. If I were trying to crochet here at the bottom and working my way around here, it wouldn't look as nice, and this beautiful edge right here would end up on the inside. So let's carry on, and every time we see a gap, let's just grab a piece that is a little bit lower to fill in that hole. All right, now that we've made it back around to the beginning, I'm going to do it one more time to overlap my gray border. Now we just need to follow those steps again for going around the thumb hole and around the bottom. And remember, your project is always going to be on the bottom, so you start here and work your way that way. Alrighty. Now you do the trim on both ends of the glove the same way. And here I have my thumb hole. And now we're going to do the trim on the thumb hole. Now we always have our work at the bottom, our finished work at the bottom. So here's the hole. And remember I talked about the V's in the thumb hole? So they're right here. And what I'm going to do, as we have been doing this crochet project, we have been doing a single stitch crochet, and we've just been going through the front loop like this. Well, when we go around the thumb hole, I'm going to recommend that we go through both loops, and that will kind of make our trim stand out a little bit. It'll be more of a pronounced edge around here. So it's totally optional. You can just go through one loop like we have been this whole project, or you can go through the 2 loops. So you start with your contrasting yarn like this, and you go through here, 2 loops. You can start anywhere. And then I'm going to take my yarn and pull it through. Then just leave the tail alone. Now we're going to go through 2 V's. Pull this through, yarn over, and pull it through both. Now go through the next 2 V's. Yarn over again, and pull it through both. I'm saying 2 V's. It's 1 V, it's 2 loops. Okay, sorry, I'm confusing like that. All right, so now you go through these. Yarn over, and yarn over again. Now, if it doesn't look exactly the same, don't worry. Just go ahead and put your crochet hook through anything that you find. All right, so this is kind of more like a knot right here. That's fine. I'm going to crochet over that. Still the same exact way. Yarn over, pull through once. Yarn over, pull through twice. Turning around the corner. Now I'm back to the V again. So I'm going to keep on doing both parts of the V. Yarn over once, yarn over, pull through twice. It's totally okay if you can't make sense of what the stitches are in there. It's all right. Just keep on putting your needle through and carry on with your edge. Now that I have my gloves done, I am going to embellish them with a denim flower right here and a button. It's going to be so cute. A denim flower will look so good with this because of the blue that's in my yarn. And I am going to use some jeans that belonged to my late husband. And so I think that is going to be a sweet use of these, and making something beautiful from them will make my heart happy. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start a strip by cutting it with scissors, and then I'm gonna rip it. Now I'm going to make another cut 3 inches in and rip again. That gives me a 3-inch strip of denim. Now I want to cut off this end. Don't need that. And then go ahead and pull off all of these extra strings. So depending on the thickness of the fabric that you're using, 3 inches may be just right for you if you're using a thinner fabric. But this denim is very bulky, so I'm actually going to narrow my strip down to only 2 inches. Now to transform this strip of fabric into a flower. My strip is 35 inches long, and what I'm gonna do is just kind of start with the beginning and kind of wad it up. And then I'm gonna just twist it. There isn't really a science to this. I'm just gonna twist it. I'm gonna snip off the extra that I don't need and tuck that in the back. Now, it's just a loose, twisted piece of fabric right now. What I'm going to do is turn it over, and then I'll use some of this, and I'm just gonna glue this right onto here, and hopefully that will keep all of my edges still. Now I'm gonna pull on the front and see if it's all glued down. It looks like it is. Now, honestly, it can be just left like this. I think that's a pretty flower as is, but I really had my heart set on using this button, so I'm gonna put the button right down inside. I'm gonna nestle it down in there, and I'm gonna glue it in place. Lovely, very happy with that. So now I'm gonna hand sew my flowers on about here on both of my gloves, and then the project will be all finished. All right, I have my flowers attached now. I decided to hand stitch mine on with needle and thread. If you need any pointers about hand stitching things, then you can look at this video above. It's about sewing a hem, but it has a lot of crossover information that you can use for hand sewing any project. I opted to hand sew it on because if I ever decide that I don't want these flowers on, I can just snip the stitching and remove it. You may opt to hot glue the flowers on, which is a really easy option, but it won't be removable if you happen to change your mind. So I hope you enjoyed learning single crochet and then making this project. And I hope your gloves turned out wonderful. I can't wait to see them. Once yours are done, be sure to post a picture on Instagram and tag me at Ryan to the Rescue because I want to see them. And once you get really comfortable with the stitch, you can whip them out pretty quickly, and you can even make them as Christmas gifts. If you liked this video, please click like and subscribe and share it with all of your friends. And now we have the new skill of crocheting under our belt. Awesome! Crocheting. We can do it.